What happens when a carefully scripted late-night moment fractures in real time? When laughter turns sharp, cameras keep rolling, and a Hollywood icon makes a decision that no one in the room can undo. Tonight, the lights are bright, the smiles are practiced, and the applause sign blinks on like a promise. But promises break. Before this story ends, one man will stand up, one host will go off script, and a studio will fall into a silence so loud it echoes across the internet. If you're drawn to moments when fame collides with raw emotion, subscribe to Studio Narrator right now, hit like, and drop a comment, because stories like this don't just happen, they explode. The band finishes its jaunty intro as the camera glides across the audience. Faces glow under studio lights, palms already clapping, anticipation humming like electricity. Stephen Colbert steps forward with that familiar grin, half professor, half prankster, soothing the crowd into comfort. My next guest, he says, voice smooth as polished wood, is an actor you know, a performer you love, a man who's been everywhere from Broadway to blockbuster. Applause swells, crescendos. Please welcome Hugh Jackman. Hugh walks out with a wave that feels effortless, the kind that says he's done this 1,000 times and still means it. He hugs Colbert. The band stings. They sit. The couch squeaks softly, a sound no one notices. Cameras settle into their marks. Everything is where it should be. At first, it's easy. Hugh laughs. Stephen teases. They talk about rehearsals, sore knees, the joy of live performance. Hugh's eyes crinkle when he smiles, a warmth that reads as genuine even through a lens. The audience laughs on cue, relaxed, trusting. This is late night. This is safe. Stephen leans in, lowering his voice just a touch. You know, he says, tapping the cue card stack. We had a few questions prepared, but I thought we might try something different tonight. A ripple of laughter. Hugh tilts his head, playful curiosity flickering across his face. Different how? Stephen's smile sharpens, not cruel, but curious. Off script, he says lightly. Just us. Just honesty. The word lands oddly. Off script. Hugh chuckles, but there's a pause, a fraction of a second where his eyes search Stephen's face, measuring. The band stays quiet. The applause sign remains dark. Stephen continues, conversational, too smooth. You've talked a lot about transformation, roles that demand everything. But what about the parts of your life you don't get to rehearse? Hugh's smile tightens. He shifts on the couch. That's a big question for midnight television. Laughter again, a little thinner. Stephen nods, as if conceding the point, then pivots. Fair enough. Let's start smaller. He glances at Hugh, then straight into the camera. There's this idea that you're always the good guy. Always gracious. Always, he pauses, unshakable. Hugh laughs, but it doesn't reach his eyes. I'm human, Stephen. Exactly, Stephen says. So let's talk about the moment you felt shaken. A murmur ripples through the audience. Hugh's jaw flexes. He takes a breath. I don't think this is. Stephen interrupts gently, but it's still an interruption. Because fans see the performances, but they don't see the cost. And sometimes, he adds, voice softening, sometimes that cost shows up at home. The studio shifts. Hugh's posture straightens, a defensive instinct kicking in. I'm not comfortable. Stephen raises a hand, smiling as if to calm a child. I hear you. Truly. But this is live. People are listening. And you've always said honesty matters. Silence. Real silence. The kind that swallows air. A camera operator adjusts focus. The tiny were audible in the hush. Hugh looks down at his hands, then back up. His voice is measured. There are lines, Stephen. Stephen nods again, but doesn't retreat. And sometimes, he says, lines are where the truth starts. A gasp somewhere in the crowd. Hugh's eyes harden, not angry, not yet, but resolute. You're pushing. Stephen exhales, a hint of irritation flashing beneath the charm. I'm asking. Hugh leans back, then forward. You're asking me to perform my life for you. The band leader glances offstage. A producer's silhouette stiffens behind the camera. The applause sign flickers, then stays dark. Stephen shrugs, trying for levity. Isn't that what we all do? That's when it breaks. Hugh stands. The movement is sudden, decisive. A chair leg scrapes against the floor, loud as thunder. The audience inhales as one. Hugh's microphone crackles. He looks down at Stephen, not towering, but grounded, solid. I came here to talk about work, he says. not to be cornered. Stephen rises halfway, palms out. Hugh, sit. No, Hugh says. Calm. Final. This isn't okay. The word walk hasn't happened yet, but the room feels it coming. Hugh reaches for his jacket. His face isn't furious, it's disappointed. That somehow makes it worse. Stephen's voice tightens. We're live. Hugh meets his eyes. So am I. A beat. 2. The audience doesn't know whether to clap or plead. Someone whispers, "Oh my God." Hugh steps away from the couch. The camera follows, unsure. Stephen stands fully now, mask slipping. You didn't have to do this. Hugh pauses at the edge of the stage, back half-turned. Neither did you. And with that, he walks. The band doesn't play. The applause sign stays dark. Stephen stands alone under the lights, a host without a script, a smile frozen where certainty used to be. The camera lingers just a second too long, long enough for millions at home to feel the cracks spread. This was supposed to be a conversation. Instead, it became a line crossed, a boundary enforced, a moment that no publicist could rewind. And as the studio breathes again, one truth settles in. When the script disappears, so does safety. Somewhere backstage, a door closes. Somewhere online, a clip is already uploading. And somewhere in the audience, a fan realizes they've just witnessed the beginning of a storm. The door backstage closes with a dull, final thud, but the sound never makes it to the microphones. What does make it through is the absence, the hollow space Hugh Jackman leaves behind, like air sucked out of a room. Stephen Colbert remains standing, hands still half raised, as if he can physically pull the moment back into place. The studio lights burn hotter now. Not warmer. Hotter. Exposing. The audience sits frozen, caught between etiquette and instinct. Do they clap? Do they boo? Do they pretend this is part of the bit? A few nervous laughs scatter and die quickly, like sparks that fail to catch. Stephen clears his throat. It's a small sound, but in the silence it feels amplified, echoing off the walls. Well, he says, forcing a chuckle that lands wrong. That doesn't happen every night. No response. The band leader glances over, eyebrows raised, waiting for a cue that doesn't come. Somewhere offstage, a producer mouths something urgently, hands slicing the air in sharp motions. Wrap it up. Move on. Save it. Stephen finally sits back down on the couch Hugh just vacated. The cushion still holds the impression of his weight. Stephen's eyes flick to it for half a second, too quick for most to notice, but long enough to betray something like regret. Or irritation. Or both. Take a quick break, he says, voice steadier now, professional instinct kicking in. Stick around. The band starts playing, a little too loud, a little too cheerful. Applause follows, delayed and uneven. Cameras fade out. But backstage, the story keeps unfolding. Hugh strides down the corridor, footsteps measured but fast, jaw clenched. Assistants scramble to keep up, one of them calling his name softly. Hugh, wait. Let's just talk for a second. He doesn't stop. He doesn't shout. That's what makes it dangerous. I'm done, he says quietly. I said no. Another voice joins in, older, calmer. He didn't mean to cross a line. Hugh finally stops and turns. His eyes are sharp now, the warmth burned away. He knew exactly where the line was, he says. That's why he stepped over it. A pause. The hum of studio machinery fills the gap. Hugh exhales, running a hand through his hair, trying to ground himself. For a moment, the armor cracks, revealing exhaustion beneath the anger. I won't do that, he says, softer. Not for laughs. Not for ratings. Back on stage, the show limps forward. Stephen returns after the break alone, introducing the next segment with extra energy. Jokes delivered a beat too fast. The audience laughs because they are told to, but the tension lingers like smoke. Every smile feels forced. Every punchline echoes against what just happened. Stephen keeps glancing off camera, as if expecting Hugh to reappear, as if hoping this was all an elaborate misdirection. But the chair remains empty. In living rooms across the world, viewers lean closer to their screens. Phones are already out. Clips circulate. Did Hugh Jackman really just walk off? Is this real? Stephen went too far. Within minutes, social media fractures into sides. Some defend Stephen. It's a talk show. Celebrities know what they sign up for. He was just asking questions. Others rally behind Hugh. Boundaries matter. You could see he was uncomfortable. Live TV doesn't mean public interrogation. Hashtags form. The moment is dissected frame by frame. Hugh's tightened smile. Stephen's raised hand. The scrape of the chair replayed in slow motion like evidence in a trial. Backstage, Stephen finally stands, pulling off his MIC with more force than necessary. A producer approaches, voice low and urgent. "We're getting heat. Big heat." Stephen rubs his temples. "I didn't think he'd leave." "That's the problem," the producer says. "You didn't think." Stephen bristles. "I was doing my job." "And he was protecting himself," the producer replies. "Both things can be true." Stephen opens his mouth to argue, then stops. The words don't come. Instead, he nods once, sharply, and walks away. In his dressing room, Hugh sits alone, jacket draped over a chair, hands clasped together. The adrenaline fades, leaving behind a tremor. He stares at the floor, replaying the moment over and over, the way Stephen cut him off, the way the audience leaned in, hungry. He hates that part most. The hunger. His phone buzzes. Messages flood in. Friends. Colleagues. Some supportive. Some cautious. He doesn't answer yet. He needs the quiet. For years, Hugh has cultivated an image of generosity, of openness. His laughed off intrusive questions, smiled through discomfort, played along. Tonight, he chose not to. And the choice feels both heavy and liberating. Across the studio, cleanup begins. Chairs are reset. Cables coiled. Another episode in the books, except this one won't stay contained. It's already out there, mutating, growing. Stephen sits alone now, staring at his cue cards. The words blur together. He thinks about timing, about how quickly things escalated. He tells himself it was a misunderstanding. A joke that missed. A question asked too soon. But beneath the justifications, a quieter thought presses in. What if he's right? The show ends. Credits roll. Applause swells, hollow and distant. The lights dim. But outside the studio walls, the night is just beginning. News sites scramble for headlines. Pundits speculate. Body language experts analyze Hugh's posture, Stephen's tone. Everyone has an opinion. Few have context. That doesn't stop them. And somewhere between outrage and admiration, the moment hardens into myth, a walk-off that wasn't scripted, a confrontation that felt too real to dismiss. A reminder that even in rooms designed for performance, there are lines you don't see until someone refuses to cross them. The question now isn't what happened. It's what happens next. By morning, the clip is everywhere. It plays on phones held over breakfast tables, on laptops balanced at office desks, on televisions muted in waiting rooms while captions scream for attention. The moment Hugh Jackman stands, the chair scraping back, the studio gasping, it becomes a loop, a digital heartbeat pulsing across the internet. Every replay sharpens it, strips it of context, turns it into something lean and combustible. Commentators argue in split screens. This was a calculated walk-off. No, this was a man asserting boundaries. Stephen Colbert crossed a professional line. Hugh Jackman overreacted. The volume rises. The nuance evaporates. Stephen wakes up to a phone that won't stop vibrating. Messages from producers, network executives, publicists, some asking what happened, others telling him what should have happened. He scrolls through headlines, jaw tightening with each one. Colbert loses control on live TV. Hugh Jackman storms off after off-script ambush. He winces at the word ambush. He hadn't seen it that way. Not then. In the bathroom mirror, his reflection looks older. Tired. He practices a smile out of habit, then lets it fall. It was a conversation, he mutters to himself. That's all. Across the city, Hugh sits at a quiet kitchen table, sunlight cutting across the wood in long, pale stripes. He watches the clip once. Just once. When it ends, he locks his phone and sets it face down. His hands shake slightly, not from fear, but from the release of holding himself together for so long. His publicist arrives mid-morning, expression carefully neutral. "We need to decide how to handle this," she says gently. Hugh exhales. "I don't want a war." "I know," she replies. "But silence will be read as something. Guilt. Arrogance. Control." Hugh rubs his eyes. "I just didn't want my life turned into a punchline." She nods. "Then say that." By noon, a short statement appears online. Not fiery. Not defensive. Just firm. Hugh speaks about respect. About consent in conversation. about the difference between openness and pressure. He doesn't mention Stephen by name. That omission speaks louder than any accusation. The reaction is immediate. Support pours in from actors, musicians, comedians, people who've sat on that couch, under those lights. Good for him. Live TV isn't a free-for-all. Others bristle. Celebrities are too sensitive now. If you can't handle questions, don't do interviews. Stephen reads the statement alone in his office. He leans back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. Part of him wants to fire back, to defend the sanctity of satire, the chaos of live television. Another part, the one he tries not to listen to, recognizes the precision of Hugh's words. No insults. No exaggeration. Just a boundary drawn clean and clear. A knock on the door. A producer steps in. "We should prep something for tonight," she says. "People are expecting acknowledgement." Stephen nods slowly. "Yay, they are." That evening, the studio fills again. New audience. New energy. But the air is different, charged with anticipation that has nothing to do with jokes. Stephen steps out to applause that feels cautious, measuring. He smiles, waits for it to settle, then grips the edge of his desk. "Before we start," he says, "I want to address something from last night." The room stills. Live television, he continues, choosing each word, is unpredictable. That's part of its thrill. But unpredictability doesn't excuse discomfort. A murmur ripples through the crowd. "I respect Hugh Jackman," Stephen says. "As an artist. As a person. And I regret that my approach put him in a position he didn't want to be in." It's not an apology in the way some want, no dramatic bowing of the head, but it's something. Enough to shift the narrative, if only slightly. Online, reactions fracture again. Classy response. Too little, too late. Damage control. The cycle continues. Hugh watches the clip later that night. He listens carefully, rewinds once. When it ends, he nods, almost imperceptibly. It doesn't erase the moment, but it dulls the edge. He texts a single word to a trusted friend, "Okay." But the story refuses to settle. Think pieces emerge, longer and sharper. About power dynamics. About celebrity interviews as performance traps. About how off-script has become code for unprotected. Late-night hosts debate it among themselves, carefully, as if circling a live wire. Stephen feels it in every joke he tells now, every question he asks. There's a hesitation that wasn't there before, a pause where instinct used to be. He hates it. He needs it. Hugh, meanwhile, returns to rehearsal. Sweat. Music. Movement. The clarity of work steadies him. In the mirror, he practices lines for a character who wrestles with exposure and control. The irony isn't lost on him. He smiles, just a little. The walk-off becomes more than a viral clip. It becomes a reference point. A warning. A reminder. Guests arrive on late-night shows a touch more guarded. Hosts tread more carefully, even as they insist nothing has changed. But something has. Because every time that clip plays, every time the chair scrapes, the silence hits, people feel it. The moment when entertainment collided with humanity. When a man stood up, not to perform, but to leave. And in that choice, the illusion cracked. The only question left now is how the audience will remember it. Not as scandal, not as spectacle, but as a line drawn in real time, under unforgiving lights. The fallout isn't over. It's just waiting for its final shape. By the end of the week, the moment has stopped being a clip and started being a conversation. It's no longer just Hugh Jackman walking off a stage or Stephen Colbert going off script. It's panels, podcasts, dinner table debates. It's comedians arguing about freedom and restraint, actors talking quietly about pressure, viewers asking themselves why the silence after Hugh stood up felt heavier than any joke that came before it. Late-night television moves fast, but this doesn't fade the way scandals usually do. It lingers. The audience from that night is interviewed outside the studio. One woman admits, "I thought it was a bit, until I saw his face." A man shakes his head. "I've never felt a room change like that. It was like the air dropped." Their words spread, adding texture to the story, turning spectators into witnesses. Clips resurface from years past, other guests squirming, other hosts pushing, other laughs that now sound forced in hindsight. Suddenly, the walk-off feels less like an isolated explosion and more like the crack that revealed a fault line already there. Hugh keeps a low profile. No victory laps. No extended interviews. Just work, family, and a few carefully chosen appearances where the questions are agreed upon in advance. When he does speak, briefly, at an industry event, his words are calm but deliberate. "We can be honest without being invasive," he says. "We can be entertaining without crossing each other." The room applauds, not loudly, but sincerely. Stephen feels the shift most when the cameras are off. Guests arrive more prepared to say no. Producers consult more often before segments. The rhythm of the show subtly changes. He jokes about it once, self-deprecating, but the laugh that follows is thoughtful, not carefree. In private moments, Stephen replays the night, not with defensiveness now, but with curiosity. He recognizes the instant when control slipped, when cleverness outweighed care. It unsettles him. It also sharpens him. Because growth, like discomfort, doesn't announce itself politely. Media outlets move on, as they always do, but the clip never disappears. It resurfaces whenever a guest looks uneasy, whenever a host pushes too far. "Remember Hugh Jackman?" people comment. It becomes shorthand, a cautionary tale compressed into a name. And for viewers, something changes too. They watch more closely. They notice pauses. They hear the difference between laughter and relief. They understand, maybe for the first time, that live television isn't just performance, it's risk. The night that began with applause ends up redefining it. Not because someone yelled, not because there was a scandalous confession, but because someone stood up and chose to leave. That decision, quiet, firm, unrepeatable, echoes louder than any monologue. It reminds everyone watching that behind every polished interview is a human being deciding, moment by moment, how much of themselves to give away. And maybe that's why this story sticks. Because in a world trained to reward oversharing, the refusal felt radical. Now it's your turn. Was Hugh Jackman right to walk off? Or did Stephen Colbert simply push the boundaries of live television? Was this a necessary stand, or a moment that went too far on both sides? Tell us what you think in the comments. Your voice is part of this story. And if you want more intense, cinematic, behind-the-moment stories like this, where fame, emotion, and truth collide, subscribe to Studio Narrator now. Like the video, share it with someone who loves late-night drama, and stay with us, because the most powerful moments are the ones no one planned.